wasn't looking for evidence. I was looking for a recipe. Linda was out back pulling weeds along the fence when she called through the screen door. "Can you grab my phone? The chili recipe's already open." Sure. Her phone was on the kitchen counter, unlocked. The recipe filled the screen. I leaned it against the coffee maker and started chopping an onion. Halfway through, a message popped up across the top. "I wish we'd met 20 years earlier." I froze with the knife still in my hand. I wish I could tell you the rest was easy, that there were hotel reservations, pictures, something that would have let me say, well, there it is. There wasn't. That's what made everything after that so much harder. Because once I saw that message, I couldn't decide which possibility scared me more. That my wife was hiding something, or that maybe she wasn't. My name's Tom. I'm 63. I spent 38 years as an electrical contractor. Most days were crawl spaces, breaker panels, ladders, and people telling me, "It was working yesterday." 2 years ago, I retired. People always ask if retirement's everything they imagined. Sometimes it is, until it isn't. Linda and I had been married 36 years, 2 kids, both grown. Our daughter was expecting our first grandbaby. Our mornings rarely changed. She made coffee. I toasted bread. She watered the flowers by the porch. I'd read the newspaper front to back, even the parts I didn't care about. By evening, we'd eat dinner together. After that, we'd sit in our recliners till bedtime. If you'd asked me whether we were happy, I'd have said yes. Maybe not exciting, but steady. And after 36 years, steady felt like a good marriage. Or at least, that's what I believed before I picked up her phone. The screen went dark. I could have stopped there. Instead, it buzzed again. David. Just a name, nothing hidden, nothing suspicious. I remember looking toward the backyard. Linda was still bent over the flower bed. She couldn't see me through the kitchen window. I had maybe 3 seconds to decide what kind of husband I was going to be. The one who respected her privacy, or the one who needed to know. I wish I could tell you I put the phone down. I didn't. I opened the conversation. Months of messages. Not hundreds every day, just steady. "Good morning. Hope your knees feel better today. Look what finally bloomed. Can you believe this weather?" He sent pictures from the community garden. She sent pictures back. Tomatoes, peppers, sunflowers. I kept scrolling, waiting for the sentence that would make everything simple. Something obvious, something ugly. Instead, I found 2 people talking about ordinary life. Then I hit one message. "You're the first person I want to tell when something happens." I read it again, then one more time. That was the sentence I kept hearing in my head. Not because it sounded romantic, because I realized that used to be me. I locked the phone, set it back exactly where it had been, even turned it the same direction. A minute later, Linda came inside carrying a bucket full of weeds. "You find the recipe?" "Yeah." "You start the onions?" "Almost done." She smiled. "Good." She rinsed her hands at the sink, asked if I'd remembered to buy sour cream. I answered. We talked about dinner. The whole thing lasted maybe 40 seconds. I'd probably forget every word of it, except I remember thinking, how could the whole world still look exactly the same? I walked out to the garage after lunch, opened the toolbox, closed it, picked up a screwdriver, set it back down. I stood in front of the workbench staring at a birdhouse I'd promised to finish before the baby came. One side still needed sanding. The sandpaper was right there. I reached for it, stopped. Couldn't tell you why I'd even come out to the garage in the first place. The radio was playing an old George Strait song. Usually I'd sing along. That afternoon, I don't think I heard a single word of it. The next few days were almost worse. Nothing happened. Linda still asked if I wanted another cup of coffee. Still reminded me our daughter needed help putting together the crib. Still laughed at the weather forecast when it promised rain that never came. Everything looked normal, which made me wonder if maybe I was just imagining the whole thing. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced down. A small smile crossed her face, not a big one, just enough to notice. She slipped the phone back in her pocket and kept talking about what color to paint the nursery. I answered her. Don't remember what I said. I was too busy wondering, when someone else become the first person she wanted to tell about her day? A strange thing happened that week. I stopped paying attention to her phone and started paying attention to us. After dinner, we'd sit in the living room. The television was on. She knitted. I'd watch a ball game. Commercial break. I'd ask, "You want more coffee?" She'd say, "Sure." I'd bring her a mug. She'd thank me. Then we'd sit there another hour without saying much of anything. For years, I'd called that comfortable. Now I wasn't so sure. Maybe we'd mistaken silence for peace. Maybe we'd mixed up living together with actually sharing a life. Almost a week went by before I finally said anything. Not because I was afraid of the answer, because once I asked the question, there wasn't going to be any pretending I hadn't seen those messages. One Tuesday evening, we finished dinner. She stood at the sink rinsing plates. I loaded the dishwasher. The faucet ran. A fork slipped out of my hand and hit the bottom rack with a sharp clang. Neither of us spoke. I dried my hands on a kitchen towel, looked at her back, and finally said, "Who's David?" She didn't answer. The water kept running over the plate in her hands. For a second, I thought maybe she hadn't heard me. Then she turned off the faucet, slowly. She set the plate in the drying rack, dried her hands on a towel. Only then did she look at me. "A friend." I know. Neither of us moved. The dishwasher door was still open between us, like something waiting to get finished. "I saw the messages." She lowered her eyes. "I figured." That surprised me. "You did?" She nodded. "Not right away." She let out a slow breath. "But you've been somewhere else all week." I didn't deny it. She pulled out a chair, sat down. "I didn't think I was doing anything wrong." I stayed standing another moment before sitting across from her. "I believe you." She looked up. "You do?" "If you wanted to hide it," I shrugged. "I don't think I ever would have seen those messages." She looked at the table. "I guess that's true." Silence settled over the kitchen again. Not angry silence, just two people trying to find words neither of us had practiced. Finally, she spoke. "We met at the community garden." "I know." He couldn't tell tomato plants from pepper plants. A tiny smile slipped out before she caught herself. I laughed. "And then we just kept talking." "Every day?" "Most days." She didn't try to soften it. She didn't say, "Only once in a while." She just answered, "Most days." I appreciated that more than I expected. "You ever meet him anywhere else?" "No." "Coffee?" "No." "Lunch?" "No." "You ever kiss him?" "No." "You ever want to?" She looked at me for several seconds. "No. I never planned to." I believed her. That wasn't the strange part. The strange part was realizing believing her didn't make me feel any better. I rubbed my hands together, noticed all of a sudden they were shaking. Not much, just enough. "So," I said quietly, "what was it?" She frowned. "What? What did he give you that I stopped giving you?" She didn't answer. She folded the dish towel, smoothed it flat, folded it again. "I don't know. Try." She closed her eyes for a second. "It wasn't one thing." "Then what?" "I could tell him little things." "What little things?" She looked toward the window over the sink. The first tomato turning red. A dog that followed me halfway home. A funny cashier. The neighbor who keeps forgetting where he parks. She laughed softly. Then the laugh disappeared. "They weren't important." I nodded. "I know. But they mattered." She looked back at me. "Guess they did." "You could have told me." "I could have. But you didn't." "No." "Why?" She stared at the table so long, I almost figured she wasn't going to answer. Then she said quietly, "Because by the time I got home, I'd already told somebody." That sentence hit harder than anything else she'd said. Not because it was dramatic, because I understood it right off. I remembered coming home from work years back, before retirement, before all our routines. She'd meet me at the door. "You'll never believe what happened today." And I'd stand there with my lunchbox still in my hand, listening to every little story. When that stopped, I honestly couldn't tell you. "Were you in love with him?" The question came out calmer than I expected. She answered almost right away. "No." "You sure?" "Yes." "You miss talking to him?" This time she hesitated. "Sometimes." That hurt. Not because of the answer, because it was honest. She could have lied. She didn't. Then she surprised me. I stopped. I frowned. "What do you mean?" I ended it. "When?" "The day you found the messages." I blinked. "You knew?" "I didn't know about the message." She shook her head. But I knew something had changed. She looked at me, tired. "You've been looking at me different ever since." I couldn't argue with that. I told him we couldn't keep talking. What did he say? He wished me well. And that was it. No dramatic goodbye, no begging, no secret plan, just the end of a conversation that had gone too far. She rested both hands on the table. "I didn't wake up looking for another man." "I know. I really didn't. I know. It just," she hunted for the words, "became part of my day." I nodded slowly. That was exactly what I couldn't stop thinking about. Not passion, not romance, routine. One conversation, then another, till someone else quietly became the person you thought about first. I stood up and walked into the living room. Our recliners hadn't moved in years. Mine on the left, hers on the right. The little table between them still had 2 coasters on it. The television remote. A crossword puzzle she'd never finished. Every night after dinner we'd sit there. She'd knit. I'd watch baseball. Commercials would come on. I'd ask, "Want some coffee?" She'd smile. "Sure." I'd bring her a mug. Then we'd sit another hour without saying much. Looking at those chairs, I realized something I wish I'd figured out years earlier. We hadn't stopped loving each other. We'd stopped inviting each other into our days. Somewhere along the way, we'd started living beside each other instead of with each other, and neither one of us had noticed it happening. I didn't sleep much that night, not because I was angry, because my mind kept wandering back into years I'd stopped thinking about. The first apartment, the little house we bought when our son was born, working Saturdays because we needed the overtime, Linda waiting up for me even when dinner had gone cold. I used to walk through the front door and she'd start talking before I even got my boots off. "You'll never believe what happened today." Back then, I never realized how much those little stories were worth. Figured they'd always be there. I woke before sunrise. The house was still. The coffee maker sounded louder than usual. Without even thinking, I reached into the cabinet and grabbed 2 mugs. I'd done it every morning for years. I filled mine, then hers. A minute later, she came into the kitchen wearing an old grey sweatshirt I'd bought her one Christmas. "You've been up long?" "Not really." She wrapped both hands around her mug. Normally, I'd turn on the morning news, weather, traffic, something to fill the quiet. That morning, I left the television off. Neither of us reached for the remote. Steam drifted off our coffee. Outside, the grass was still wet from the sprinklers. A robin landed on the fence, looked around a second, then flew off again. Finally, I asked, "Were you lonely?" She looked into her coffee instead of at me. "I don't think I knew I was." I nodded. After a while, she said, "I wasn't unhappy." "I know. I just," she struggled to get it out, "stopped feeling noticed." I looked down at my hands. If she'd asked me the same question, I think I would have said the same thing. A few days later, we drove across town to buy the crib for our daughter's baby. Usually we'd drive with the radio on. That day, neither of us touched it. We stopped at a red light near an old diner. Linda smiled. Remember that place? I looked over. The one with the terrible pancakes? She laughed. They really were terrible. So why'd we keep eating there? She shrugged. We were broke. And 28. She laughed again. Rest of the drive, we kept remembering places that weren't there anymore. The movie theater where we'd taken the kids on Saturdays. The hardware store that always smelled like lumber. The little ice cream stand that closed years ago. None of it fixed anything. But it was the first conversation we'd had in a long time that wasn't about groceries, or doctor's appointments, or what needed fixing around the house. When we pulled into the parking lot, neither of us got out right away. Linda looked through the windshield and said quietly, "I missed this." So did I. The weeks that followed weren't dramatic. Nobody made promises. Nobody said we'd never hurt each other again. Life doesn't usually work that way. Some evenings, we'd still drift into old habits. I'd disappear into the garage, she'd sit in the living room. Then, one of us would stop. "You want to take a walk?" "Yeah." Sometimes we'd make it around the block. Sometimes we'd just sit on the front porch instead. Sometimes we'd stay in the kitchen talking while dinner got cold. Little things. Nothing you'd tell your friends about. But they started adding up. I noticed she wasn't reaching for her phone as much. Then I realized I wasn't reaching for mine either. Not because we made some rule, because we were already talking. One evening, a summer storm rolled in. The sky turned dark long before sunset. We sat on the porch listening to thunder somewhere off in the distance. Kids were racing bicycles home before the rain started. A neighbor waved as he pulled his trash cans to the curb. Linda stared out at the street a while. Then she said, "I almost told you." "About David?" She nodded. "More than once." "What stopped you?" She thought about it. "I think..." She shook her head. I was embarrassed. "About him?" "No." She looked at me. "About us." Neither of us said anything after that, because I understood. Admitting there was someone else to talk to meant admitting we'd stopped talking to each other first. Months passed. Not enough to forget. Enough to notice things had changed. Sometimes her phone would buzz on the kitchen counter. She'd glance at it, then finish what she was saying before she picked it up. Sometimes mine rang during dinner. I'd let it wait. The call was almost never urgent. The person sitting across from me mattered more. Funny how long it took me to figure out something that simple. One Saturday afternoon, we cleaned out the junk drawer in the kitchen. Every house seems to have one. Dead batteries, loose screws, rubber bands, takeout menus from restaurants that closed years ago. Way at the bottom, we found old movie tickets, anniversary cards, a folded road map from a vacation we took before GPS existed. Linda picked up a faded restaurant receipt. She smiled. "I forgot about this place." I looked over. The steakhouse by the river. The coffee was awful, but we always stayed for pie. We always stayed for pie. She laughed, a real laugh this time. Then she picked up her phone, looked at it a second, slipped it into the drawer, closed the drawer. Without saying a word, she handed me an old anniversary card. "Read this." Inside, I'd written something 30 years back. Nothing clever, just, "Can't wait to grow old with you." I smiled. Looks like we did. She reached over and squeezed my hand. Neither of us said anything else. Didn't need to. I used to think betrayal started the moment someone new stepped into a marriage. Now I think it starts a lot earlier than that. It starts the day two people stop bringing the ordinary parts of their lives home to each other. And sometimes, finding your way back doesn't start with fixing everything. Sometimes it starts with 2 cups of coffee, and finally having something real to say.